Hello and welcome. My name is Amanda and today I have for you my July wrap-up. So I listened to quite a few books in July between physical books and audiobooks. I didn't read anything on my Kindle, but I did read quite a few. So in no particular order, well, I guess the order that I wrote them down in my bullet journal, but not necessarily the order I read. I'm just going to start out with my first book that I have written down, which is Clockwork Angel by Cassandra Clare. This is the first book in the the Infernal Devices series by Cassandra Clare. And it was a 14-hour and 37-minute audiobook. I'm having a hard time recalling if I listened to it on Scribd or through my library, but it was one of those two. And this book, I ended up giving a 2-star rating. I was really excited going into the Infernal Devices series. I am buddy reading this series, well, the whole basically Shadowhunters Chronicles with my friend Darshell over at Books and Planners. I will leave her channel link down below. We read the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments and then are moving into the Infernal Devices trilogy now just because that's the way that Cassandra Clare recommends you read the Shadowhunters Chronicles. So I was really excited because I had heard a lot of good things about this series, and I thought that it seemed like a lot of people that weren't so keen on the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments really liked the Infernal Devices a lot more. And since I had pretty consistently been giving like a 3 or 2-star rating to those first 3 books, I thought I would like this book a lot more. But I didn't really like the character of Tessa all that much, and I thought that Will resembled Jace too much, but like his bad attributes were more pronounced than like the Jace in the Mortal Instruments. That's how I felt about Will. He I guess he could seem like kind of a complex character, but we didn't really get too much about him to where it really felt like he was. He was just kind of a jerk. I really liked Jem. He is by far my favorite character so far in this series. And I really like that we meet Magnus Bane as a younger warlock. And the thing I liked about this, and one of the big complaints I had about the first 3 books in the Mortal Instruments, was that there wasn't enough world building. She was mostly just progressing the plot of the story with all the drama and the relationship romance that was really gross. So I really wanted to learn more about what Shadowhunters are, what they do, like what their purpose is. I wanted to learn more about the tattoos they put on themselves, how they work, like what happens when you run out of space. Do you have to redraw a new tattoo every time, or can you go over the spot that it already is? I wanted to learn more about the Steelies and just the world as a whole. And this book, Clockwork Angel, gave us a bit more of a background in that. And I'm currently listening to Clockwork Prince, and it's giving even more, and it's kind of linking the 2 series a bit. So it's been nice, but overall I was left a little disappointed just because I did think it was going to be kind of leaps and bounds better than the Mortal Instruments first 3 books are. But we'll see how it goes. There's 3 books in this trilogy, so we'll see. So the next book I have written down is Dunkirk. I actually started this book in June, and this is the history behind the major motion picture by Josh Levin. And I really enjoyed learning about the history of Dunkirk. So I read 39 pages of this in June, and then I finished the last 300 pages in July. And being an American growing up in the United States and going through the school system in the United States, Dunkirk and the events that happened there really aren't taught in school because this was prior to the U.S. joining in World War II. So we really don't get the history and background of this. But I wanted to watch the movie because of Harry Styles, and I thought it would be good to have background information. Actually, when I bought this book, I bought it at Costco, and I thought it was that maybe the movie was based on a book, but then like when I got home, I realized the subtitle was just the history of the events, and like it ties into the movie, but it really just gives you a good understanding of what led up to Dunkirk and the events and the evacuation and things like that. I learned so much with this book, and it makes me even more excited to watch the movie now. I actually let my parents borrow the movie, and they felt very disconnected from it and didn't get a lot of that information and history that they were kind of hoping to get from that movie. So now I'm really glad that I did pick up this book before watching the movie, because I think the events that happen are just going to connect a lot more to me, and I'll be able to kind of walk Skylar through it as we watch it together. But I thought this was really good. I don't remember if I said the star rating on this. I didn't rate this like a normal book, which I kind of break out into different categories and then, you know, do multiplication and maths and stuff. But I did give this a 4-star rating. It's a little hard to rate nonfiction, but I thought this was really good. I did think it was, I guess, a little drawn out. There were areas where the focus got really broad, and I kind of wanted to keep it really focused and generalized. So that's kind of why it didn't get a 5-star rating from me, but overall it was very engaging and I learned a lot of information. So it was a great book. The next book I have on my list is The Paris Wife by Paula McLain. This book has been out for how long? Since 2011, but I think they have a new cover of it or something, because I've been seeing this book everywhere in the stores. But I picked this up from my local used bookstore a couple years ago, and it sounded really intriguing to me. It follows Hadley, which was Ernest Hemingway's first wife, and kind of it starts with them meeting to the end of their lives, essentially, and just kind of what it's a fictionalized, but also taken from, I think, like letters and things that Hadley and Ernest wrote back and forth to each other, just about their marriage and their time together. But it's kind of fictionalized of their life as well. It's not an exact biography or anything. This was, I listened to it on audiobook. It was an 11-hour and 26-minute audiobook. I think I listened to it on Scribd, and I gave it a 2-star rating. I was pretty disappointed in this book because, why was I disappointed? I just really didn't like it. I didn't connect with them. I didn't care about them. And Ernest Hemingway was a cheat and just not a good person. And it kind of almost makes me like not want to read Ernest Hemingway's books. But it's also a little interesting because at the time that I finished this, Skylar was listening to a podcast that was like, I don't know, there's fish in the title. I'll put it down in the description box below. I haven't watched a whole lot of it, but one of the people that they dove into was Ernest Hemingway, and Skylar thought he was such a fascinating person, was telling me all about his life, and I was like, I don't like him. He's garbage. He cheated on his wife and divorced her and blah, 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 and left his son and this, that, and the other. So it was interesting to kind of get information in a more rounded, to see like Ernest Hemingway as a more rounded person and not just like a two-dimensional person. So I guess if you like the historical fiction, Jazz Age period, books set in France, books about real marriages and relationships and things like that, you might like this. I guess it just didn't live up to my expectations, so it wasn't a favorite of mine, that's for sure. The next book I listened to was After We Collided by Anna Todd. This is the second book in her After series. I don't know what it's called, but I listened to this on Scribd, and it was 19 hours and 16 minutes, and I gave it a 2-star rating. I listened to this at the beginning of the month, so I have to kind of recall why I didn't like it as much. But basically, I'm pretty sure After started as fan fiction about Harry Styles, so, and then it developed into a series. So you have this girl, Tessa, who moves to college. This is set in Washington, and it's a fictionalized college called Washington Central University, but my knowledge of the state, I'm pretty sure it's Central Washington University, which is a college in Ellensburg in Washington, because they talk about how it's like a 2 or 3 hour drive from Seattle and things like that. So it kind of helps me visualize what college they're actually at and like what part of the state and stuff. So she goes to college, she meets this bad boy, and things happen. So this is right after the events of After, and it's kind of their relationship has crumbled. She found out he lied and used her and did all these things, and it's kind of like them trying to fix things, but then things keep happening, and basically it's just a whole lack of communication on both of their parts that all of these events happened. And it was obnoxious because if you've been on my channel for a little bit, you know that one of the things I despise is a lack of communication in books. And I understand it's like drives plots along, but I just hate it so much because it's not real life. So bad communication, kind of like a emotionally and mentally abusive relationship, and the main character is really obnoxious to me, but I don't know, the drama just keeps sucking me in, and I do want to continue with it, but I'm not in like a super rush to continue with it, so I will eventually. But this one it wasn't as good to me as After was, and it was like, it definitely had like second book syndrome, where it was just a really long drawn out thing that could have been condensed so much, and it was just kind of pointless. So next book I read was Love, Life, and the List by Casey West. I listened to this on Scribd, and it was an 8 hour and 19-minute audiobook that I gave a 3-star rating. It's definitely not my favorite Casey West book so far that I've read, and I only got into Casey West, was it this year or last year? I think this year. But I think so far my favorite Casey West book is Listen to Your Heart. And Love, Life, and the List follows two best friends. The girl, I can't even remember their names anymore, but she has unrequited feelings for her guy best friend. She is a painter. She really wants to get her artwork out there and noticed. She works at a museum, and there is an upcoming like art gallery, art showing that she really wants to apply for, even though she's too young. But she wants to eventually apply for this. It's not an internship or an externship. It's not a camp. This thing that she can go to, but there's certain requirements she has to meet. So this, getting her artwork into her museum's showcase is like the next step she needs to be able to apply for this program. And so she shows her artwork to her boss, and he says that basically she doesn't have enough heart into it. He can't really like see her in her artwork, so she needs to work on that. And so she builds this list that her best friend helps her check off, and you know, they do things, they figure out things about each other and love and stuff. So it was cute, but it also had a lack of communication, so that's why it just wasn't there for me. So the next book I have on my list is Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. This was a 9 hour and 17-minute audiobook that I own on Audible, and I gave it a 2-star rating as well. I had a lot of 2-star ratings this month, but I also had quite a few 4-star ratings. I really, what did I not like about this book? it was just kind of boring. To be honest, I felt like he could do so much with the world and his characters, and it just fell flat. You follow a young prince who is making his way to a monastery. It's not a monastery. It's but basically like a monastery. And his father and his brother both get murdered. So he was never expected to ascend to the throne, that whole story, and then he has to. We interrupt your regularly scheduled program to bring you a puppy dog. This is Aoife. Skylar got home, so that's why there's a break. But anyway, half a king. So uncle is not happy. He wants the throne. He tries to kill off son or nephew who isn't killed off, and then he gets sold as a slave and joins the ship, and slaves revolt, and then he makes it back and finds somebody who's supposed to be long dead. It's a trilogy, and I don't think the third book is out yet, and I don't honestly think I'm going to continue on with the series, because I just kind of, the first book ended at a nice spot, and I just really don't care to continue on with the story. So next book I have is this is tricky with the dog. I have Boys of Summer by Jessica Brody. This I read. It was 330 pages. I gave it another 2-star rating. That's the last 2-star rating for the month. This follows the points of views of 3 best friends. So each chapter alternates between one of them. It's their last summer spending time together on Winlock Harbor, which is where one of them vacations. One lives there like half-time and one lives there full-time. You've got Grayson, who's a star football player who's supposed to go to Vanderbilt in the fall, but he got in a car accident and messed up his shoulder pretty badly, and lied to his PT and his dad and stuff that his shoulder is healing up, and they don't know that he is not back in shape. So he basically is trying to figure out, like, how is he going to make it through Vanderbilt on his scholarship with a messed up shoulder. You also have Mike, who lives there full-time. He and his family are in working class. He has 2 twin brothers who are like 6 years old, and he has to do a lot for the family in order to help keep them afloat. His dad has a broken leg, and so he just is working nonstop to help his family. He's got a longtime girlfriend that he plans to move to New York with. Things happen there. And then you have Ian, who recently lost his father. His father was in the army, and I think he was in an area of a suicide bomber. So he's dealing with his grief. So another lack of communication trope. You've got 3 best friends who can't talk to each other, who don't want to talk to each other, who want to pretend like everything's fine and just like it was back in the day. And so it was all right. I guess it was kind of about friendship. It was more about them coming back together and kind of sort of helping each other through their things. It wasn't that great, though. I wouldn't really recommend that. The next book I have that I listened to on audiobook through my library, I think, is My Grandmother Asked Me to Tell You She's Sorry by Frederick Bachman. This is my 3rd Frederick Bachman book that I have read, and I kind of wish I had read it before Britt Marie was here, because you are introduced to Britt Marie before the events of Britt Marie was here. But this follows Elsa and her grandmother, who has cancer and passes away, and gives Elsa these letters to deliver to people within their community, basically telling them she actually did appreciate them. She's sorry for the way she treated them. And there's also a kind of darker thing going on in the community that Elsa doesn't know about, that she learns throughout the plot of this story. I really enjoyed this. It was very magical and whimsical at times. Her grandmother crafted this world for Elsa when she was having trouble falling asleep, and they live in that world. They have their secret language, and what Elsa doesn't know is the people in her community and in the building that they live in, that the people are actually a part of the story. So I did really enjoy this. I thought it didn't feel too young, even though we're basically following Elsa, who is like 7 years old. But it didn't read super young, and it was just a nice like middle ground between the whimsy of a child and also like what adults have to go through. So I did really enjoy this. Frederick Bachman is basically like an auto read author for me now. I have really enjoyed all three of his books. I think I've given them all 4 stars. And I really look forward to reading more of his books. And then the last book I read was a reread for me. It was Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. I listened to this through my library because the first time I read it physically, and I want to continue on with this series. It's one of the series I have planned to finish this year. And I remembered like the big plot points of the story, but I wanted to re-listen to it and just kind of refresh my memory a bit more. So it was 11 hours and 19 minutes. I gave it a 4-star rating, which is what I gave it the first time. And you follow Ender from the age of like 6 to 30 something. It's mostly between the ages of like 6 and 14 though, as he gets picked to go up to flight school. Kind of like flight school, and learn kind of like military tactics and battle tactics to defeat the buggers, which are kind of like an alien race that the Earth has been in war with twice, and there's a third war that's on the horizon. So Ender goes up to learn how he can defeat the buggers, essentially. So you follow him at the school as he is learning and growing and things like that. And I can't say much more because it would spoil it, and it's got a really good plot twist in it. I did not see it coming the first time. And then kind of the after effects of that as well. So I really enjoyed this. There was also like a half hour or an hour on the audiobook that was Orson Scott Card talking about how Ender's Game came to be and just kind of the ins and outs of it that I thought was really interesting. So those are the 9 books that I read this month. I read a total of 630 pages and listened to a total of 85 hours and 16 minutes. And probably not surprising because of how many 2 stars I gave, my average star rating for the month was 2.8. I would love to know what you read in July, if you've read any of these books before, and what your thoughts and opinions of them were. So I would love to chat with you down in the comments until my next video, and I will see you then. Bye!